So let me just introduce you for a second. So I want to welcome everyone to the last week of xEssentials. Hopefully this has been a very educational series, which I think have been pretty successful, mostly due to all the hard work of all the presenters and the various different topics we've covered. Tonight's topic is no different. It's going to be Drones 101. We have two very qualified presenters who I've seen in action with their drones and have done a great job. So save your questions. You can either put them in chat, or are you going to ask questions in between, Josh, or do you want to save them to the end?
All right. So like Ed said, we are doing Drones 101. This is just going to be a basics about how to fly your drone, what drone you might want to look into getting, how to stay out of trouble with drones. So we'll go ahead and get started. So first of all, I am not a lawyer. So please look into your local laws and regulations. Make sure you know how your drone works and what to do in case something goes wrong. You can't come back and say, well, Josh told me to do this. And now there are guidelines on FAA's website for how you can fly as both a hobbyist or a commercial pilot. So I'll be happy to give those links after the talk too. So what are we talking about? We are talking about drones for cinematography specifically. We're not talking about the $20 toy drones that you get at Target. We're talking about a little bit higher end drones. The toy drones, the racing drones, they're really not feasible for what we want them for. We want them for recording our shows and stuff like that. So we'll be talking about a lot of the ones that you see right here. So let's go ahead and get into the legal stuff. First of all, drones over 0.55 pounds must be registered with the FAA. The hobbyist registration is only $5. It takes probably 5 minutes to do. They give you a registration number and a little card to print out. They want you to attach it somewhere on your drone in case your drone falls and injures somebody or something like that. They have a number, or to relocate the drone's owner. A commercial license, we're not going to talk too much about the commercial, but I'll go into it a little bit. So the commercial license requires you to pass an aeronautical knowledge test, and it has a lot of things based on actual flying of planes. There's stuff about wind shear, and there's stuff about how a wing is shaped. So there's a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with drones, but you still have to pass it to do commercial flying. Anything that makes you money, even YouTube videos, is considered commercial at this point, and they are starting to crack down on a lot of this. So if you are planning to make money off of this, I highly suggest looking into the commercial license. There are plenty of places that have classes on what you need to know, and it's $150 and it lasts for 2 years. Regarding hobbyists, so you must fly strictly for recreation. Like I stated, no money can be made from your flights. You must fly within visual line of sight. A lot of these drones will fly up to 4 miles away. Legally, you're supposed to be able to still see your drone when you're flying it. Follow community-based safety guidelines. There are multiple communities that are drone hobbyists or aeronautical hobbyists that have a set of guidelines that you can follow. It's kind of the Wild West still a little bit, so you can pick whichever one you want to follow and follow that set of guidelines. It's really good if you can find like a local group that is into doing model airplanes and stuff like that, and get with them and see their guidelines. So the drone must be under 55 pounds. This includes all payload. Most of these drones we're talking about today really won't carry much of a payload and aren't even close to this, but this is one of the rules. Never fly near another aircraft. So this is a big one. If you see any aircraft in the sky, whether it is a helicopter, a airplane, or anything like that, the rule is you are to bring down your drone quickly. You are not supposed to be anywhere near these. They have the right of way, and you are to get out of their way. Even if you don't think you're close to them, just be cautious. You must notify any airport or helipad prior to flying if you're within 5 mile radius of the airport. This used to be a lot easier. You could call up the tower and you could just say, hey, I'm going to be flying. This is the reason I'm flying. The FAA has kind of squashed that now, and you have to go through a process through their website, and I believe it's a 90-day wait period ahead of time that you need to get permission. Sometimes the smaller municipal airports, they don't have the system in place, and you may be able to call them and talk to them, and you might even make some friends over there. You never know. Never fly near an emergency response. And actually, this last step I should take out. I said that you must fly during the daytime. That actually is for commercial drones, and they must get a waiver. As a hobbyist, there are a few rules about flying at nighttime. You must have some sort of light on your drone that can be seen up to 3 miles away, and just make sure that you're not impaired in any way. So that's like the beginning of the legal stuff. I don't know if anyone has any questions. We can kind of...
Josh, the first part says 0.55, and then the bottom part says 55. So is that a typo, or they're both?
Nope. So any drone over 0.55, just slightly over half of a pound, must be registered. However, you cannot fly anything that weighs more than 55 pounds.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of these things you'll see, they stuck with the same number, so it was easy to remember. 5 miles, 0.55 pounds, 55 pounds. So they actually kind of did this on purpose. It was kind of a number. They were all random numbers, obviously. Like they went, okay, well, where are we feeling safe with these things? And they also made it easy for you to remember. All right, we'll move on to the next slide.
Hey, Josh.
Yes, sir.
Just to point one thing out, you don't register your drone, you register yourself. You can fly any amount of drones. They don't take the serial number of a drone, and it's just information.
I'm sorry, that is correct. You are correct. I misworded that. All right. So continuing about a little bit more legal stuff. You're not to intentionally fly over unprotected persons or moving vehicles. This is kind of don't fly over random people. If you're flying near friends, family that you're taking video of, and they're willing participants, still be safe. You never know, that drone could fall out of the sky. Just be safe. Keep the drone out of any no-flight zones. We'll talk about those in just a minute. You cannot fly in a national park. So there's a lot of these rules that are like this where you can't fly in a national park. Technically, you can take off outside of a national park and fly over a national park, but do you really want to deal with the hassle of the rangers? That's up to you. Some of them are very strict about it. I know I've heard of people having their drones confiscated from them for flying at a national park. With everything in the news lately, and with it being just like a really hot topic right now, a lot of law enforcement, a lot of park rangers and stuff like that are on edge about these things. And it's one of those things, do you want to cause a waves, or do you want to just enjoy your hobby and continue doing it? Don't fly in adverse weather conditions, and do not fly near or over sensitive infrastructure. This includes, power plants or water plants, stuff like that. You want to stay away from those. A useful app for current conditions and flight restrictions is the UAV forecast. You can see that down here. It'll give you, based on your area, whether you should be flying or not. It'll also give you a forecast of everything from precipitation and fog and wind gusts. And it also gives you a map of all no-fly zones. So you can see if you're within the 5-mile radius of an airport or a helipad, or, if they have a temporary flight restriction based on, the president's in town or something like that. You can see all these things. A couple things I didn't mention also is, one more thing I didn't mention is the altitude restriction. So there is a restriction of 400 feet height. That's pretty high. You actually can barely see your drone at that height. There are some caveats to that rule. So let's say you had permission from the city to go take some video of a skyscraper. So the rule is 400 feet above the structure that you are within 400 feet of. And that's a radius around it. So within 400 feet of a structure, you can be up to 400 feet above that structure. Just to keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and move on. So picking a drone, I've listed some features here that are very important and some really nice to haves. So battery life, obviously, if you're taking video of your show, the more battery life you have, the more time you can actually get of your show. 18 to 25 minutes is about average. There's a couple coming out right now that are up to about 28 to 30 minutes. Also, buying additional batteries is a smart idea. Depending on your drone, they can be pretty expensive, but I suggest at least 3 batteries, which will give you, for me, it's about an hour to an hour and 10 minutes of flight time total. Most of these ones that I'm going to talk about already, they do have the brushless motors. These provide a longer lifespan and tend to be quieter. A camera. We're doing this for recording of our shows, so a good camera is definitely something that you want to prioritize with your new drone if you're looking at getting one. So nice to have's a 3-axis gimbal. So what this does, and a lot of you I'm sure know already what a gimbal is, but it basically keeps your camera stable and takes out some of the shake and allows you to have a stabilized video. Follow me mode. This is something that was really DJI does a lot of. There's some nice, they call them quick captures. You can spiral around, so you could draw a square around your house and you can have it spiral around and get a full 360 shot of your house or zoom out of your house. And it really makes some of these cinematic views much easier to do for a novice. Integrated GPS is a great thing to have. It allows you to have a more stable flight. It allows you to locate your drone if it happens to crash somewhere. It allows it to automatically return to home on a lot of these devices. So that's awesome to have. Obstacle avoidance. This is definitely something that's in a lot of the new drones. It will prevent you from running into things. There are some cases where the obstacle avoidance is turned off. At nighttime, it tends to be turned off. When going into what they call a sport mode, they'll turn those off so that it doesn't have to worry about the processing of this obstacle avoidance data. But it's gotten really advanced to where some of these drones can fly through a hole not much larger than them on their own. Range. So we'll talk about range a little bit. Like I said, flying within line of sight is something that is what you're supposed to be doing. A lot of these products will fly up to 4 miles away. You can't see your drone 4 miles away. However, when you have these drones that have a longer range, that means you're going to have better signal even when it's close to you. Just because it's a stronger signal and you don't have to worry about losing the signal as much due to trees or other obstacles. And something that's really nice to have, and it's starting to come out on a lot of the consumer or prosumer drones, is an adjustable aperture. And those of you that take photos and everything like that and use digital cameras that are higher end, they'll know what the adjustable aperture is. But it allows you to adjust how much light is coming into the camera so you don't have to change your shutter speed, and it gets you a better picture. There are ways around that. There are, my drone does not have an adjustable aperture, but I can use ND filters to reduce the amount of light when it's really bright outside so I don't have an overexposed picture. And Tom will talk a little bit more about that at the end of this. All right. All right, so some of the top picks right now, this list is heavily weighted towards DJI just because they are pretty much the market leader right now as far as prosumer drones. So we'll talk a little bit about each one and some of the benefits of them. I don't have all of these drones, but I know a little bit about each of them. So starting on the bottom end, you have the DJI Spark. So the Spark is a very small quadcopter. It has a 720p camera. It does have a small 3-axis gimbal. It's not the best gimbal, but it is there. It's a great starter drone to get into if you're looking for a low-end drone. You're not going to have the best video quality. 720p, it's good enough for some. Once you get up into the air, you do have, let me pull up my notes on this real quick. I thought I had them up already. Sorry about this. If anyone has any questions while I'm looking these up real quick. All right, actually, so the Spark does have a 1080p. I'm sorry. The Spark does have a 1080p camera. It does have an integrated gimbal. It weighs 10.6 ounces. It is a great small travel and beginner drone. You can literally fit the thing in your pocket. It's really tiny. So the Air we have here is, this one does have a 4K camera. It can do 4K, 2.7K, and 1080p. It's another one that is small. It folds up. This one has a controller also. So it's a dedicated controller that you plug your phone into, and you get a 720 video feed back to your phone. It includes the return to home. It includes some orbit features, some of those quick capture things I was talking about. The Phantom 4 Pro was one of the first big prosumer ones. It's a great drone for videography, for taking videos and everything like that. It does have the adjustable aperture. It has a 4K camera on, I believe. Let me double check that. Yeah, it does have a 4K camera. It's a really good drone. The problem with it for me is that the size, it doesn't fold down like some of these other drones that we're talking about. And therefore it's a small suitcase to take it anywhere with you. And that's the complaint I've heard a lot of people say that they have, that is, it just takes a lot to take it with you. So you're not going to be traveling with it. The Mavic Pro 2 and the Mavic Pro, the Mavic Pro 2 just came out about 3 weeks or a month ago. That is the upgraded version of what I have. So it is a full-size drone, but it folds down to the size of your palm. The new one, the Pro 2, does have an adjustable aperture. It does 4K video. It has a 5-mile range on it. It's a great drone. If you're looking for that middle-end drone, I would highly suggest it as a first drone if you're willing to spend the money on it. It's a great one. The Inspire is kind of your professional end. So these range between 2,700 and 3,500 for the Inspire. It's a little bit heavier. It weighs about 7 pounds. It does have the 4K camera. It's a really big drone. It even does 5.2K, which I didn't know that was a thing. So the Parrot Bebop, there's not much to say about it. It's one of the cheaper ones. It does not have a gimbal, so it uses software to do your stabilization. If you're going to look at something in that price range, I definitely suggest just looking at the Spark. So Uni is a Chinese manufacturer that is actually making really nice drones for a really good price. So the Uni Typhoon H Pro is, I believe it's if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's got 6. It's not a quadcopter. It has 6 motors on it. For the price of $825, if you're interested in getting something larger like that, that is just super stable, it's definitely a good one to look at. The only downside is being a Chinese manufacturer and being a lower price range, you are getting a 720p camera on that. So that's the big miss on that. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it is 1080p and 4K. Okay. Never mind. It's a 720 feedback to the camera or to the phone. So it is a 6-rotor or 6-rotor drone, but it's much larger. You're talking probably 8 times larger than my drone. It's a pretty big one. And then we have a Rise Trello. So this is a new one. It's $100. It's actually a Rise, DJI, and Intel got together to make this. It comes in 2.8 ounces. It's extremely lightweight. It's actually the lightest one on this list. compared to let's say the Mavic Pro is about 1.8 pounds. It does have an integrated camera with a gimbal. It does do 720p video. This is a great drone to get started in. $100 gets you started. You can see what some of these advanced features are that you're going to get on the higher end drones and see if it's for you. Definitely a good one to get started. So when you're flying your drone, first thing, just please go ahead and read the manual. Get familiarized with your drone. You don't want to be up there and get some kind of warning on your screen and not know what it means. These things are very advanced. They will tell you if you're coming into a no-fly zone. They will tell you if you have extreme wind conditions up there. They can tell all these things and relay it back to your screen. Use that UAV forecast app. Make sure that you are okay with the weather conditions. Make sure you're happy with, feeling comfortable with it. Always, always, always inspect your drone before taking off. If there is a bend in your propeller, if there is a loose piece with your battery, anything, it could go drastically wrong. A couple examples, if let's say your propeller is starting to act up and you don't realize it and you're, 1,000 feet away from you and it just starts acting up. If one of those propellers is not fully working and it's thinking that it's giving it as much gas as it needs to stay up in the air and it's not, it could possibly go into a tailspin or into a spin and just go straight down to the ground. The DJI Spark Air and the Spark in the Air, I know for a fact, their battery enclosures are on the bottom. And one of the issues that people have had is either they didn't have their propellers checked out and it was vibrating a lot, or they didn't make sure it was clamped down correctly and the battery fell out midair. And there's no recovering from that. Just no recovering from that if your battery falls out. There's not even like trying to get it back limping. So never fly with any damage to these components. These are lithium-ion batteries. I know you all know about the warnings about lithium-ion and making sure that there's no bulge or anything like that. Make sure that your landing zone is clear of obstacles and your takeoff zone. A lot of these won't land unless you force them to if there's a bunch of obstacles in the way. You just don't want anyone standing close to it in case a gust of wind comes up and takes it towards somebody. Those propellers are spinning fast and they do not feel good, I promise you. If it has a beginner mode, stay in that for a while. Basically, the beginner mode, so my drone flies up to 40 miles an hour. In beginner mode, it goes 5 miles an hour. This gives you the time to make sure that you're comfortable with the controls, and it's really can be disorienting if you're not used to flying a drone, because when it is facing you, all controls are opposite. And then when you turn around, it's back to normal. And then, this can get really disorienting, and you should really take it up for, a couple of hours in beginner mode and just get used to it and understand how it flies and everything like that. Make sure you understand what the GPS is, the return to home, obstacle avoidance. Make sure you understand where your obstacle avoidance is. So on the previous generation of the Mavic Pro, the obstacle avoidance is only in the front, whereas with the new Mavic Pro 2, it is on all 4 sides. It's got a full 360. So make sure you understand where it is, because if you're doing one of those a 360 around a person and you don't realize that you don't have obstacle avoidance on the side and you run into a tree, well, there's your drone. It could be broken. Obviously, stay clear of all obstacles during flight if you can, and don't push your drone past what you're comfortable with. Pay attention to warnings given by the drone. Don't end up like the guy here swinging after his drone. I've seen this happen on too many videos where they were like, I'm going to test how far my drone can fly. And then they went, oh, it's telling me that it's at 50% battery, or it's only has enough battery to get back to home. And these will tell you, they'll tell you if you're flying pretty far away, it'll say, hey, I've only got enough battery to come home, and it'll return to home. But you can cancel that. I've seen these people do this, and then their drone doesn't make it back home. It ends up in water, it ends up in mud. It ends up somewhere that they have to go trekking for it. Don't do that. So that's mostly what I have for as far as like the safety and guidelines. I'm going to hand this over to Tom for a little bit to talk about actually recording your show.
Thanks, Josh.
Can we just ask if there's any questions at this point before we start?
Absolutely.
So the floor is open quickly if there are any questions for Josh before we switch gears.
Would you suggest people take a look at the AMA and their guidelines first?
Absolutely. So the AMA is one of those organizations I was talking about earlier that is the community guidelines. They have a lot of guidelines out there that go further than what even I covered here. And it would definitely be a good thing to look into to make sure that, you follow those rules.
Like established flight line for safety.
Correct.
And just to mention in Facebook, Chris Emsley has pointed out he's willing to help out anybody in the UK that needs awareness of what the rules are there. So
yes, the rules for each country are different. And so that's one thing. I'm planning on going to Amsterdam in February. I would love to take my drone, but I'm looking at what the regulations are for traveling with it to make sure. I know like all of Amsterdam is a no-fly zone pretty much, but some of the outskirts you can fly. So you got to check with your local area.
That'd be interesting with Brexit and the European Union, whether, how all that falls into place. But that's a topic for another day.
We will see, sir. We will see.
Okay, so let's switch gears. Tom, you're up.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing.
All right, let me get mine going here. Maybe.
Tom, if you need me to share and you can just read off of that, that's fine too.
Oh, I got it.
All right.
All right, just got to move these windows out of the way. All right, everybody see the screen?
Yep.
All right. So, recording at night. Recording at night is definitely way different. I am still experimenting with a bunch of settings, and it's definitely way different flying at night than it is during the day because there's a lot more things you have to take into account for. So when you're flying at night, you got to have a light that's visible up to 3 miles. Most of the newer drones come with this type of light. I know the Mavic Pro 2 does, with the lights on the back are supposedly visible 3 miles, but you may want to look at getting a better light. If you're flying commercially, you will require a 107.29 wavier, which allows you to fly at night. You will see conflicting information on this. Josh and I were talking about this earlier, actually. There's a lot of places that say that you cannot fly at night as a hobbyist, but according to the FAA, you can, but with different rules. So obviously, when you're flying at night, you definitely want to fly in line of sight. Keep your strobes. I know for my drone, I have strobes on the back as well as LEDs in the front, so you know which side's front, which side's back. And just keep in mind when you fly at night that a lot of the safety features that you have during the day are definitely hindered at night. For instance, your sensors depend on light and them seeing the reflection off of objects. Mavic Pro 2, when you light that's on and kind of sensor so that you don't go too low to the ground. But again, just keep an eye on what you're doing. Again, just as Josh said, follow a community-based set of guidelines. And again, this one is know your area, because at night there's things that you don't take into account for during the day that you really got to take into account for at night, like trees, especially like at my place, I have a lot of trees around, and it definitely makes your hair stand up on the back of your neck when you're flying, because there's a tree there, but you can't always see it depending on the light and reflections coming off of the road or the lights or your house or something like that. You don't always see it. And it goes without saying, make sure you fly with increased altitude. Typically you can get pretty creative during the day, but at night I'd keep it above the tree lines if you can. Typically here in Florida, you got about 60-footer trees. I keep my drone about 75 feet. And when it comes to recording, and I should have moved this, and I apologize about that, but make sure your front LEDs are turned off. There's two ways you can do this. You can actually just turn them off altogether through your settings, or there's a mode where when you click video record, it'll turn the front LEDs off. Obviously, you don't want the light right near the camera. And always calibrate your drone. So this is something I do before every night flight. I calibrate my compass and the IMU, which is basically the system of, what's up, what's left, what's right, what's upside down. Because there's no second guessing or chances at night, because it's a lot harder to see where it's going down if it goes down, if you let it get away from you. And the next thing is have a plan. Before you go out and fly and do your recording, look and see what's around there. Look at your trees. How are you going to fly? Which direction are you going to fly? How high are you going to go? Try to do it during the daytime so that when it comes nighttime, it's a little bit easier. And then one thing you can also do is you can also set your max altitude and distance prior to flight. So as Josh mentioned, you can go up to 400 feet or 399.99. And you can go out, as far as you can see it. In some cases, you go 4 miles, but you can actually tune this in most of the drones today to only allow you to go, but so far up and so far out, so that, if you get complacent of where the drone's at, you won't go so far away from you. You might be able to find it. Always make sure your RTH setting is on. So if you don't have a drone, that means return to home. A lot of today's drones are very complicated, or I don't know if complicated is a word, but very knowledgeable in where it's at and where it needs to be and where it can go. Somebody like Ed, who flies, the commercial aircraft for fun, or the hobbyist aircraft for fun. With these drones, you pretty much can just hit a button and it will go. One of the new updates coming out for the Mavic Pro 2 is going to let us do waypoints. We can literally set up waypoints around our area and take the drone up 200 feet, hit go, and it will literally follow those exact locations, sit there, go do a spin and record, and then move to the next one and do it all automatically. You hit the RTH button and literally the drone will come back and land. They say within 3 meters, but I think my drone's maybe gotten 9 inches from where it took off from. That's about as far as it's gotten away. So it's pretty sophisticated. So anyway, back to the night mode. I definitely recommend tripod mode. Tripod mode is basically where the drone slows all of its movements down. So when you're yawing to the left or yawing to the right or going forward or going back, it does it really slowly so that it doesn't shake the camera and get you a lot better video quality. Some of the things that are really important is the ISO, the aperture, and shutter speed. So when you fly at night, you can't really use the autofocus anymore. You have to go manual. I mean, you could do auto focus, but you're going to have a lot of video where it blurs. And, sometimes it's great, sometimes it's horrible. It just depends. So I fly mine all manual. And it's something that I'm still working on as far as my settings, because it really depends on the time of day or the time of night you fly. It depends on, how bright the moon is. It depends on, whether you're running 30% on your lights or 20% on your lights or 10%, or if there's some kind of event going close to your house, it could bring in more light. So it really depends. So I set up some of the things that I use when I fly, and I'll go over that. So I set mine for 4K at 24 frames per second, not the 60. I also try to use mine in ISO 100 or 200, but no more than 800. And I'll go into what each one of these is. My shutter speed, I keep it 1/25th, no less than 1/10. And then for color, I keep it auto. And then color profile is none. Now, the color profile, if you're using like a video editing software, you can actually set these up for D-Log. I won't go into that because it's very technical. But you can actually set your settings to how your video editing software is going to be. And it will, when you bring it into your editing software, it automatically adjusts all that stuff and makes it, much clearer. And then the softness, I set to +1. contrast is 0, saturation 0. Cinematic mode. Cinematic mode is basically, so when you're flying forward at 45 miles per hour and you let go of the stick, it literally pitches up really high to stop on a dime. In cinematic mode, it does not do that. It gradually slows down so that the camera gets more of a, it's not such an abrupt end. So you can actually see the difference. The other thing is, and you don't have to get this, but they actually have goggles like virtual reality. They're about $399, but you can put these on and actually look at the camera, flying a drone, which is much easier at night, so that you can actually see, and you can actually tilt the camera with your head movements, and you can actually fly the drone with your head movements. It's pretty crazy. But especially at night, that makes things a little easier. But again, not just something recommended, not something you have to do. So going back to the aperture, shutter, and ISO further explained. So I know Tom George has done this on a couple presentations, and he's went over this many times. But so the aperture is the iris and the lens that can be open and closed to control the amount of light entering the lens. On a drone, most of the cheap ones, as Josh was telling you, this cannot be changed. But some of the newer ones that are coming out, you actually can change this. And so basically the aperture gives you the depth of field effect at the larger end of the scale, while at the larger end of the scale, while remove the depth of field effect with the smaller aperture. So if you look at the picture here, you can see here that F32 really focuses on a person. You got the background. It really gives you that broad view, whereas F2 really focuses on just what's in front of you and distorts everything in the back. So that becomes pretty helpful at night as well. Most of the drones, I think, are set at like F2.8. So you can actually adjust that depending on your light situation. As far as ISO, it should always be set to the lowest possible value. Increasing the ISO pretty much amplifies the signal picked up by the sensor, which increases the amount of noise visible to the captured image. So as you go lower in ISO, you're going to get a better quality, but you're also going to let more light in, which will specifically for night make it much more visible and make things appear darker. When you're flying during a day and you're doing a sporting event, then you want your ISO to be higher, because the lower the ISO and something moves, the more blur it's going to have. So with the ISO, you have to really be careful on your sequences, actually, because if you got a really fast-paced song and your lights are moving left, right, left, right, left, right, then you're going to have to adjust your ISO to compensate for that, or it's just going to be one big blur when it comes out in the recording. As far as the shutter speed, again, shutter speed is to explain it, a low shutter speed of 1/2 would open the shutter for half a second, and then something at 1,000th means the shutter is only open for 1,000th of a second. So obviously, the faster it is, the less motion blur; the slower it is, the more motion blur, but also the more light that comes in. So you really have to adjust this when you're flying at night. I wish I could tell you the most perfect settings, but it really depends on a bunch of variables. How much light's in there, the moon, is it a fast song? Is it a slow song? And it's just so many different variables, and I'll show you a video of a couple of my nighttime flights.
Hey, Tom, one thing on the shutter speed real quick.
Yep.
There's this thing called the, it's called the 180 degree rule. So if you're shooting at 30 FPS, you really want to keep your shutter speed at like 1/60th, at 50 FPS, 1/100th, and at like 60 FPS, 1/125th. It gives you a more natural movement in your video. This is specifically for video. If you're taking pictures, it's a little bit different, but for movement in video, you kind of want to take whatever your FPS is and double that for the shutter speed. Obviously, this is easier with the aperture adjustment to be able to change how much light's coming in, but
yeah, appreciate it. let me move this over here. Let's see. So this is, okay. So here is a pretty much an autofocus flight right here. Can everybody see the video? I just want to make sure I'm on the right screen.
Yep.
Okay. So this is flying at night with autofocus, and you will see, and yes, I know my singing face over there is messed up. So you can see autofocus tries to adjust, and you'll see it kind of get blurry on the arches and grainy on the pixels in the front, and the tops kind of get grainy. You can kind of see like a little bit of shutter speed at the top there on the top roof line. And this is just me moving the camera. Also, keep in account when you film at night, you're not going to get the perfect shot the entire video. So this is where you plan on what angles you want to take and how you're going to fly around. To get your shots, to make sure you plan this part, because you're obviously going to be adjusting stuff for each shot. So that's that. The second thing is, so as far as like the fly around me stuff that Josh was talking about, you can forget about that at night. It doesn't work that well with lights, because if you focus in right here, and obviously these lights start moving, your camera is going to sit here and just shake, trying to keep up with it. So you have to use the GPS fly around mode for night. And that's basically where you go and sit over top where you want it to be. You hit a button, says this is where I want to record. You back up how far away you want it, and you hit go, and it'll fly around via the GPS. So that's that one. Let's see. This one is where I started to mess with manual mode. Now this is done right at dusk, so it's a little bit brighter. So you can see a lot of reflection off of my building here, but that's just because it's not quite dark enough yet. So this one is manual mode with ISO of 400, I believe. And this one is ISO of 200. Now this is tripod mode, so you can see I'm flying forward. And I'm actually coming down, and there's actually a tree to the right in case you didn't see that. So you see tripod mode really slows things down and try to keep that camera smooth. And that's me messing with the gimbal. I should have slowed my gimbal down, but I forgot to do that. So that's really it. Just getting different shots. I try to get closer just to see what it looked like, and pretty grainy there. But and if you don't feel like recording lights, you can go out and check out your neighborhood like this. So fun stuff. Well, that's all I got. What do we got for questions?
So feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions if you've got any.
Can you change these settings on the fly, or does it have to be done ahead of time?
Yeah. So go ahead, Tom.
Well, I was going to say, it really depends on your drone, but as far as the ones we're talking about, absolutely. One of the annoying things for me is you can't set your settings before you actually turn it on. So, I mean, you could a little bit, but you can adjust your stuff on the fly. You go into manual mode. You literally can set up buttons to adjust everything you want. You're basically looking at your smartphone. We should have done a picture of that, Josh. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
You
did not
got
think
yours handy?
I do have mine right in front of me. You want to show the screen off?
Yeah. You just got your webcam on.
All right, give me a minute to turn it on. But a little bit more about these, a little bit more, and we'll get to the questions in chat in just a second. But a little bit more about these drones in particular is the DJI drones especially are super advanced. They're using a custom interface for their wireless connectivity. They have firmware on the remote control on the drone. They even have firmware on the batteries that gets updated constantly to make them more efficient, to make sure that they're working correctly. Everything in this is a smart piece. So all these questions about, can you update this? Can you do this? Yes. A lot of it is just absolutely. So let me just connect my drone. You'll hear everything turning on.
Your camera is not on, just so you know.
Yep. I'm going to turn it on in just a second. All right. So let me get to my, oh crap. I reset my phone, Tom, and don't have the drone app on here right now.
All right, let me grab mine. But go ahead and go to the questions. Let me grab mine.
Sure. So UV forecast, dark pink and a light pink. So on there, if it's a circle, it's going to be it's probably a small municipal airport. If you click on that circle, it'll actually tell you what it is in the app. So it gives you all the information right in the app. Do they have the ability to use the iPad as well as the phone? Yes, they do. There's actually an extra port on the bottom of the controller. It's a USB port that you can plug in an iPad. And they actually make holders. So normally your phone goes inside of this holder right here. They do sell aftermarket holders that will go in here, and that actually holds the iPad in front of it. They're great to have because you get a bigger real estate. So another thing that I didn't really talk about was, you're paying all this money for a drone, especially if you're going with one of these DJIs or something like that. And I highly suggest going with a dedicated device as your phone or tablet. Get an iPad Air or something, an iPad Mini, something like that. If you're spending that much on a drone, do you really want to risk your phone got an update that you weren't expecting, and all of a sudden it doesn't fly right, and then your drone can't connect correctly while you're midair or something, and you lose, something? Definitely something you want to consider. And a lot of the guys that are doing this full time, or they highly suggest this, is to have a dedicated device for doing that. So as far as no, we didn't talk about editing software. That's really another talk that could be had separately. It's not much different than editing any other video. FAA Part 107 permit for personal use? No. So a FAA Part 107 is strictly a commercial license. There is no need to have one to fly as a hobbyist. And also, if you're interested in making money off this, there's a lot of companies out there that are doing realtor drone footage and stuff like that. Don't be afraid to go take that test and get that. Just because you have your commercial 107 license does not mean you can't still fly as a hobbyist. There are a lot more restrictions put on someone that has a 107 permit, but when you go to fly, if you're taking this flight as a 107, it's a 107 flight from the moment you take off until you land again. If you're flying it as a hobbyist, it doesn't matter that you have a 107. You're making a video that you're about to take when you're up in the air. It's the same as being a hobbyist. It's not going to change anything. So if you're interested in making money off of it, don't be afraid to go get that license. It's not going to prevent you from having fun and enjoying the hobby.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and show you the app.
Sure. It's actually at the bottom of his screen right now because he has it directly in front of him, and it's telling him there's an obstacle there.
Still on my gimbal.
Yeah, so it's going to complain about that too.
There, I don't know how to get this to focus.
So there's a few
so
things. Tap app at the bottom left so they can see the app. You can fly. It shows you your entire flight log. With DJI, you can see an entire flight log of everywhere you went and how long your flight was. That's really good if someone's saying, oh, you were flying right over my house, or you were flying in my windows or something like that, and they want to cause any problems. You can pull up your flight log and say, nope, I never went near your house. Here's the full GPS log to show you.
And there's the satellite mode. And then, so here's where your settings you can do on the fly. I don't know, it's hard to see, but that's basically all the settings for the camera. I'm trying to get this to focus in, but it's not.
Tom, is that an iPhone or a Android phone?
This is an iPhone 8 Plus, so it fits right in here just nice.
I highly suggest, I'm not an Apple fanboy. I just highly suggest right now with the state of DJI to use some kind of Apple device with it. There's been too many occurrences of Android devices crashing with the DJI app and people freaking out because they could no longer talk to their DJI drone.
Well, that's good to know. Thanks, Josh, for that tip.
Yes, sir.
So here's the LEDs on the back. And I got the front ones off right now.
And so I basically have the same drone as Tom, but this is it folded up. So you can see it's very compact and easy to take with you.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
And when you're flying, I suggest you go into airplane mode, because if you don't on your phone and you get a call while you're flying, it will interrupt.
Yes.
And that could be painful.
These are pretty smart devices. They will stay in the air where they are if you take a phone call. I'm not saying I've never done it. I'm not saying you should do it. It's definitely a good idea to switch to airplane mode.
I do have a Parrot Bebop, just a regular Parrot Bebop, not the 2. I just got the regular one.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it. It's stable. Don't fly where it don't need to be flying, and you can actually set a flight plan for it, and it comes back when it's done. So it's actually it's not a bad drone. I paid a lot of money for it, but
yeah, my biggest problem with the Bebop is for the price that you're paying, you're getting a digital stabilization. You're not getting a gimbal that actually stabilizes the camera. Yeah. So basically what it's doing is it's taking your big picture and it's cropping it down and then stabilizing it inside that. So you're losing some of the field of view. You're getting a little bit grainier shot sometimes. That's my only big problem with that.
The quality is like excellent. Like when you bring it down, like sometimes I'll put it in the grass and take off and just let it sit there and hover. But when it actually starts up and it's sitting in the grass, I mean, you can actually see every blade of grass. And it cuts grass good too, by the way.
They all do, yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure.
We got a couple more questions in the chat. Someone asked if you need cell or Wi-Fi service in the area you're flying. No, you don't. In fact, a lot of people fly with a tablet that's not connected to service. I suggest downloading any maps of the area that you're going to be in first before you go out there, just so you have the satellite maps you can see around. And if you're not going to have self-service while you're out there, check that UAV app before you go to make sure that it's a good area to fly. Go ahead.
Say that's a good point. So make sure when you're flying, I know with me, because I live kind of in an area surrounded by trees and a lot of spots, make sure you take your drone up and let it sit there for a little bit so that you get a good read on the wind, because there's times where I thought the wind was okay, but at 200 feet it was 20-25 knots, so I had to bring it back.
Yeah.
So can I ask about that? Both of you are Florida guys, but there are a lot of people up north and have snow, or even folks in Australia, a little hotter than what we're traditionally used to in December. Are there any special weather type guidelines or rules that you'd recommend?
So obviously don't fly it in rain. These aren't waterproof devices. A lot of these higher end drones, like my drone, has a giant heat sink on the bottom with fans inside of it that keep it cool. It still gets hot, but it's kind of like the inside of a computer. It gets hot, but it doesn't get hotter than it needs to be. Don't leave the batteries out in the sun, though, in direct sunlight. Don't leave them in your car. They're lithium-ion batteries, and they will explode. Just don't do stupid things with them. What's that you're showing there, Tom?
I was just showing, see if I would have checked my wind profile, I would have seen that.
Yeah. Yep. It's showing all red.
Yeah. So I shouldn't have taken it up it's so high, but.
Yep. Yeah. As far as flying, like I've seen plenty of people fly these things out when it was super cold outside. No major issues there that I know of. And, even in the middle of the summer, I've been flying mine all summer and it's been fine.
Battery life is decreased in the cold.
Yeah, that's something good to think about. So the drone will tell you about how much battery life there is, but if there's conditions like super cold, it's going to do its best to compensate for that, but it's not guaranteed to be correct.
So any final questions for Josh and Tom?
So there were a couple more in the chat. Scott asked about if it has a setting to start recording as it takes off, or do you always have to tap the red circle? I don't know on that, but it's easy enough to hit that circle right before you take off and you can start recording right away. I can look into that and let you know. I just don't know for sure. Unless, Tom, do you know?
I don't either. I just used the quick button on the left.
Yeah, generally the takeoff videos that I've taken, they're not all that great anyway, because you really need to focus it and everything like that once you get up in the air. And then someone asked the difference between the Phantom Pro 4 and the Mavic Pro 2. So really, the Mavic Pro 2 is the step up into the same area as the Phantom 4. So the Phantom 4 is several years old now. It was the big hitter back in the day, 3 or 4 years ago, as far as like a prosumer drone. But the biggest thing is it's a large drone. It's slightly larger than my drone, and it doesn't fold. Versus the Mavic Pro and the Mavic Pro 2 folds down to the size, but then you can unfold it and have a full-size drone. So the Phantom 4 Pro is slightly bigger than this, and it doesn't fold down. So you have to have a very large carrying case plus batteries and everything like that. So that's the big difference, is that the Mavic Pro 2 has that adjustable aperture. It has a 4K camera. It has everything that the Mavic Pro has, or the Phantom 4 Pro has, but in a smaller package, and it's a great device. So if you're looking in the newer, like if you're looking to get a new drone, the Mavics are really where it's at right now. They've put a lot of technology into these.
Now, are there warranties you can buy? Is it worth buying a warranty?
Absolutely. So DJI offers a refresh. I think it runs about $100 for your drone. And when you're buying a drone that's over, $1,000, $1,500, it's well worth it. It includes up to 2 free replacements if you have the parts. So if you have the parts, but if you can recover the drone. So let's say it crashes, it falls apart. Anything that happens to it, if you can recover the drone, they will replace it for you up to 2 times. There are things that, so one of the things I was telling Tom about is you can go through State Farm insurance. Even if you don't have them for your home insurance, you can get it's a private possession liability type claim or something like that. I think it's I want to say it's under $20 for a year, and they will cover it lost, stolen, damaged, anything. So that's a good backup to have in case it sinks to the bottom of the lake or something and you can't recover it.
Yeah, it's like $30. I got it.
Yeah, it's well worth it. And it covers, I think, up to $6,000. So you can throw in some other personal effects, like a laptop or something with it as part of the coverage.
Being an EMA member also gives you liability insurance.
Okay.
Now, what about buying it? Can you just do it on Amazon, or is it a Best Buy, or is there a better place, that y'all would recommend?
So really, if you have a local dealer, and a lot of those will give you some kind of discount sometimes, but watch out for the sales. I waited till the Mavic Pro went on sale at Amazon, and I went into Best Buy and they price matched it. I've got the Fly More bundle, which comes with 3 batteries, 6 extra propellers, which I highly recommend getting extra propellers, because if they're damaged, you're not flying. I got it for $1,000, which was the price of the original drone. And those batteries for these drones are $90 a piece. So to get the whole thing plus 2 extra batteries, extra propellers, and everything for the same price as the drone was an amazing deal. So definitely look out for the sales on Amazon. Excuse me. And if it's sold and shipped by Amazon, they will price match. A couple other questions in the chat. So Andrew asked, doesn't the Mavic Pro 2 zoom as well? So there is no Pro 2 zoom. There is a Mavic 2 zoom and a Mavic 2 Pro. They kind of segmented those slightly differently. So the difference is the zoom has a 2x optical zoom, whereas the Pro has a 2x digital zoom. But really, you're going to get the adjustable aperture with the Pro. You're not going to get that adjustable aperture with the zoom. So if you're picking between the two, the Pro, if you're looking for high quality video and that adjustable aperture, that's the one that you would want to go to.
Okay, any final questions?
I have a question that's kind of far out there. In the first slide on Tom's presentation, it showed a picture of the Intel drones that made a design. What would it take to do something like that? And is that available at a consumer level?
Not yet. So as of right now, that's all, as far as I know, I've looked into it. It's all proprietary, unless you want to really go homegrown and custom write some software for this. There's no like commercially available thing that would be within a budget that anyone could ever want. Because really you need a drone that has GPS, that has obstacle avoidance, that has a really big brain in it to be able to do that kind of thing. You're talking probably minimum of $600 a drone at, 30 drones, even 30 drones for a very basic circle or something like that. It gets really pricey really quick. I'm hoping in the future this happens, but it's going to be a while before it's something super available to the public, I think.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the two you and Tom have, what's the difference in yours and Tom's? Is it just the camera, or is there some other things?
Yeah, so there's a few small differences between mine and Tom. So mine came out about 2 years ago, and it was the first one that had a 4K camera and was foldable. So it was a really big hitter back then. The big difference is the camera. So DJI partnered with a new camera company. Tom, I don't remember what the name of the camera company is, but it's a really big German camera company.
Yeah, Hasselblad.
Right. Hasselblad, yeah.
Yeah.
So they partnered with them and put a Hasselblad camera on there, which is like one of the high-end, cameras. But the things they added were like the adjustable aperture. It can actually record at a higher frame rate in 4K than the one that I have does. Slightly longer battery life, slightly quieter, and slightly faster flying speed. I think mine flies at 40 miles an hour, and I think his flies up to 43 miles an hour in sport mode. But really, if you're using these for, I take it out there and have fun with it and take it at 40 miles an hour sometimes. But if you're doing it for cinematography, you're really looking at 5 miles an hour at most.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I meant to show this earlier, but this is more of a daytime. Let me just to show you the camera quality you get. This is actually a video.
Nice.
Well, Tom's showing that video there. I got a question. What study guide would you guys recommend for taking the FAA test?
You're muted, Josh.
Sorry, I was looking for. My bad. So the one that I haven't taken the 107 yet. I plan on taking it soon. And the one that I'm going to go with is remotepilot101.com, and I can put a link in here. So I watch a lot of the guys that are doing this, for a business on YouTube and all that stuff. And I would say over half of them suggest Remote Pilot 101. They're really one of the biggest ones out there, and they break everything down really well from the videos I've seen from them. So I put the link to their website in there, and it's really not crazy. The full course is $150 plus $150 to get your registration. But if you're going for a commercial, what's $300 to get the study guide and all the videos and then your license, and then be on your way to be making money with it?
Yeah, it's a good point. Most of the stuff I saw was it's airport maps and which way you're landing from down. It's annoying.
There's a lot of stuff that has nothing to do. The thing is again, drones are still the Wild West of aviation, and it's still going to be a few years before there's full regulations and they're considered their own thing, and it may even be longer than that. So we kind of get stuck with a lot of these things, like having to know what an airfoil is and what shape of an airfoil does different things, and what side of an airport should you come in on depending on the wind, and there's a lot of these things that have nothing to do with the drones that you're going to have to learn if you want to get your certificate.
Yeah, what's the downwind leg and all that kind of stuff? You got to know all that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, I know that, but unfortunately I can't read the stupid maps.
Oh yeah, the aviation maps are amazing. Let me go see if I can find a picture of one of those.
They're horrible. Well, they're not. Let me rephrase that. For a non-flight guy, it's horrible.
So here, let me share my screen real quick. This is just I love it. So if you're looking at my screen right here, here is an aviation map. You have some things in here, like these big circles will tell you the distances from the airport. You have some things in here that will tell you the direction to fly in towards the airport. A lot of landmarks. It's very crowded. It's an antiquated system, and they haven't updated it since the beginning.
Where are you living at?
I just grabbed this randomly.
San Francisco. Oh, okay. I'm looking at San Francisco.
Yeah, I just grabbed this randomly. It was the first image that showed up on Google Images.
Well, that's why I asked the question, is because I'm right next to an airport. It's an unmanned airport. I've got dark pink and light pink.
Oh, okay. So, yeah.
What is my minimum altitude?
So
San Francisco and Texas are extremely crowded.
So
pretty everything else is Class Echo.
So it's an unmanned airport?
Oh.
Yeah, there's no tower in it.
So, there's no tower. Okay. So what I would do is they should still have like an outside public publicity, like call number. Call them. What you're really required to do, and you're going to hear debates about this, and I'm not going to tell you what you should and shouldn't do. Definitely check with your local AMA. But your requirement is to notify them. And if you look in the forums, you're going to hear a lot of debate over this. But the general consensus is you are required to notify, not get permission. So you must notify them in some way that you are going to be flying. Now, that's not going to fly with a Tampa International Airport or whatever San Francisco or New York Airport. But these smaller unmanned airports, notify them, let them know. Some way, somehow, give them a call, something, let them know. You might even be able to.
I just want to let me step in here. I'm a commercial pilot.
Sure.
An unmanned airport is basically uncontrolled. There's no tower there. There's no controlling facility. It's left up to the pilots to self-announce their intentions.
You're right.
Even if you do call the airport, you're probably just going to get like somebody that's there at the airport. It's not really anybody of any authority. There's no authority figure for the FAA or anybody at an uncontrolled airport.
Paul, you want to hear something funny?
Thanks for that.
The same property that the airport's on, and it's a busy airport. It's not, amateur guys flying in there. There's an American Model Association flying airplanes right next to the runway.
That happens a lot.
You see that a lot because they have such a large area, especially in a city area. It's probably the only place they can fly. But
no, we're kind of like rural.
Yeah, but even like you'll see like at uncontrolled airports, you'll see like ultralight aircraft, you'll see paragliders, you'll see all sorts of things. So there's no authority there that could really give you any permission or tell you not to. It's basically uncontrolled. That's why it's an uncontrolled.
I'm trying to. It's not uncontrolled because you got to announce, like you said before, you have to announce that they're landing. But what's the minimum? It's 400 feet, right? For a drone. And I know these guys, maximum is 400 feet. And I know these guys, the pilots there, are flying well underneath 400 feet coming in.
Yeah, when they're landing, but it's still controlled G. It's not controlled airspace. Like where Tom lives, he's in underneath controlled airspace, right where he is, which is well above the 400 feet. So he's fine. But if you look like the sectional map that you brought up earlier, those rings for Class B airspace for that area, those rings that showed you what altitude that controlled airspace started at, and then it ended at 10,000 feet. So you can be below controlled airspace and not be worried about it. But then uncontrolled airport, there's no controlled airspace there.
So, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but the one thing that he should probably do is just fly by the whole. Basically, the manned aircraft has the right of way. So if they're coming, if you should be able to hear them and see them long before they're close enough that you can't get out of the way.
Yeah, I wouldn't justify flying close to that airport. I mean, like you said, there are planes landing and taking off, and they're on, doing a downwind or crosswind or upwind leg. There could be planes coming in on an instrument approach there. Even though it is an uncontrolled airport, there's still instrument approaches at uncontrolled airports. So I wouldn't advise flying near that airport because you do have a lot of aircraft traffic in the area, but it's not controlled.
Do you guys mind looking at the location through the website that Josh had, the UAV? I'll give you the zip code.
Yeah, would you mind doing this offline after? Are there any general questions, and then y'all can address it after the call? Okay. I want to thank you both very much.
The xLights project exists because of people like you. Help continue the project by making a donation today at xlights.org/donate.